Good morning, esteemed colleagues, delectable medical women across the globe, our international partners, top government functionaries, medical colleagues from other associations, including male colleagues, stakeholders in the elimination of violence against women and girls. I warmly welcome you to today's event, which is a webinar on the international and regional instruments for rolling back violence against women and girls. My name is Dr. Mininim Oseji, and I am the chair of the Medical Women's International Association Violence Against Women and Girls Special Interest Group. Without further ado, I would like to invite our international president, Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi, to take the mic.
I'm gonna take you shopping, everything I'll be outside. Yeah. Well, where do you want to go? Apple Store.
To take the mic.
Well, I'll be on in the laptop for...
And give the opening remarks. Dr. Eleanor, you're very welcome. Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Mininim Oseji, Chair of the Violence Against Women and Girls Special Interests Group of the Medical Women's International Association. I see online other esteemed members of the association. We have our current Vice President of the Near East and Africa region. We have our immediate past Vice President of the Near East and Africa region, and several dedicated MWIA members and friends and other members of the Special Interest Group. It is with tremendous pleasure that I participate and give a few remarks at this webinar on international and regional instruments to roll back violence against women and girls. I would like to add, we can start with the rolling back, but we must work towards ending violence against women and girls. I'm excited to see that we have well-credentialed speakers lined up to speak to regional instruments. It is well known that I'm aware, sorry, I think there's some interference. Maybe there's a microphone that's not muted.
I've been saying that it will not come and crash.
Okay. There is a microphone that's not muted. All right, I will continue. I was going to say that I do wear another hat as a co-founder of the Every Woman Treaty. And that is a coalition of over 2,000 activists, researchers, survivors, and legal luminaries. And we've been working for 10 years on a global treaty to end all forms of violence against women and girls of all ages and all vulnerabilities. And why do we need a global treaty? We need a global treaty because we have regional treaties that do not cover every woman and girl on earth. I'm so happy to see that we'll be discussing the Bellum de Para of Latin America. We will be discussing the Maputo of Africa and discussing the Istanbul of Europe. These are all wonderful conventions. However, they serve only 25% of women and girls on earth. We need a global treaty because violence that is fully preventable happens across geographical borders. They are not restricted within borders, which is why a grandmother living in the Netherlands can easily take her child from the Netherlands, where there are strict laws on female genital mutilation, and take her to another country where the laws are not strict or adhered to or implemented in another geography. So violence happens within and across geographies, unless and until we have a global treaty to end all forms of violence against women and girls of all ages and all vulnerabilities. Then we would not be ending the pervasive violence that happens to women and girls because they are women and girls. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of talk around gender-based violence, but there is the violence that's targeted directly at girls. And therefore, the nomenclature, the narrative today is gender-based violence against women and girls. So the femicide that we are seeing in different parts of the world, the issues, for example, around harmful widowhood practices, the issues around female genital mutilation, the issues around breast ironing, those are targeted at women and girls. And therefore, I want to leave you with these words of encouragement to say that when we have a global treaty, it means that the first thing is that we will level the law. I'm putting up my hand with the 5 fingers. We will level the law, which means the law will be applicable everywhere on earth. It means that there will be training for lawyers, doctors, magistrates, policemen, and women. The reason is that we no longer should have security sector personnel who will ask a girl, so what were you wearing on the night you were raped? No longer should we as physicians have a survivor or victim of violence walk into our consulting rooms and not recognize it. If she said she fell down the stairs and she has a fracture, was she pushed? We also need to make sure that there's prevention education for boys and girls, men and women. We need to make sure that there are services, hotlines, shelters, and we need to make sure that there is dedicated funding. My dear friends, anywhere where you hop on a plane today in the world, you must hear an announcement on the aircraft over the tannoy by the airline crew that smoking is not allowed on the aircraft, even in the toilets. You pick up a packet of cigarettes and you will see the Surgeon General's message. Do you know why? Because there's a global treaty on tobacco that every nation on earth signed up to. I am looking forward to a situation where there'll be a global treaty to end violence so that wherever we are on planet Earth, governments would have signed up, perpetrators would have been brought to book, and bystanders would make sure that there is reporting and that there's a good reporting mechanism and that we have metrics-based reporting. What do I mean by that? Has violence happened concerning this aspect of violence, yes or no? Not the type of narrative report we have with the Convention on Discrimination. It has to be clear reporting, metrics-based reporting. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair of the Special Interest Group, and I am sure we all look forward to the rest of the speakers. I will request very kindly that I be excused to go on to yet another meeting. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you so much, Madam President. We are honored to have you. Thank you and do have a great day. And so we are going to go to the next presentation, and I'm going to put off my video so that it will be easy for me to make the presentation. And that is on the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Screen. It's not, well, it's not showing on my phone. So we have the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Next slide. And the outline for the presentation is just this brief. It's brief. You have the introduction, key informants, key information, content, and then the M1 experience of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action from 1977 to 2023. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, or BPfA, is a landmark document for advancing women's rights and gender equality worldwide, agreed upon during the Fourth World Conference on Women in 1995. The year 2020 marked the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which was adopted in 1995. And it is widely known as the most progressive blueprint for advancing the rights and empowerment of women and girls. Key information about this document: you have the date of the event, 14th to 15th September 1995, 2 annexes, 6 chapters, 12 strategic objectives and actions to address critical areas of concern, location, which is Beijing, China, and then notes, which cite 35 other documents. The contents, it starts with an introduction, then you have Annexure 1, which is the actual Beijing Declaration. Then you have Annexure 2, which is the Platform for Action, consisting of 6 chapters. Chapter 1 is the mission statement. Chapter 2, the global framework. Chapter 3, critical areas of concern. Chapter 4, strategic objectives and actions to address critical areas of concern. Chapter 5, institutional arrangement. Chapter 6, financial provisions. Can't see the last one. Okay. Now, if you look at that document, which is over 100 pages, you can get confused. We've tried to summarize it in this presentation. Into the chapters. So based on what you're interested in, you can actually go to one chapter, review it, and do what you want with that. But to bring it closer to home, we are sharing the experience of the Medical Women's Association of Nigeria in implementing various aspects, all the various areas of concerns in the strategic objectives and actions over the 46 years of M1 existence. So in her 46 years of existence since inauguration in 1977, the Medical Women's Association of Nigeria, M1, has been carrying out programs targeted at achieving the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action before and since the Fourth World Conference on Women in 1995. And the examples of the activities are given below. The first area of concern is women and poverty. M1 has provided conditional cash transfer for pregnant women to receive maternal health services by skilled birth attendants in order to discourage the use of traditional birth attendants. Education and training of women. M1 organizes regular continuous medical education programs to build capacity of medical women to train other health workers. This is an example of some of the events. Women and health. M1 promotes women's right to health information worthy, an initiative founded by our international president, Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi, when she was M1 national president from 2005 to 2007. M1 organizes regular free medical outreaches for vulnerable people in communities, including screening for non-communicable diseases. And this is the launch of the Worthy Project on breast self-examination in 2019. 4. Violence against women and girls. M1 implements several strategies to contribute to the elimination of violence against women and girls. M1 has conducted advocacy to influential men who we call our male champions to promote male involvement in maternal and child health, which includes standing against violence against women and girls. M1 has conducted advocacy and awareness creation on violence against women and girls, including participating in the global treaty, in the global virtual Red Shoes protest on violence against women and girls, and signing of the global treaty to end violence against women and girls, which Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi spoke about earlier in her opening remarks. M1 has organized several training programs on various strategies to control gender-based violence, and M1 works closely with FIDA and other stakeholders to share information so that areas that have high concentration of violence against women and girls are identified and efforts to control the situation in those places are intensified. Women and armed conflict. M1 has organized a webinar on conflict resolution to build capacity of medical women in promoting peaceful resolution of conflicts. M1 has also provided support for women in internally displaced camps arising from conflict. Women and the economy. M1 has promoted economic empowerment of women for health through sensitization of members on financial planning, strategies to economically empower female adults and youths, organization of an M1 youth mentorship program, and so on. Women in power and decision making. Nigeria's first international president of the Medical Women's International Association, MWIA, in the person of Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi, has been leading medical women across the globe in advocacy and guidance on issues surrounding women's health. M1 members are encouraged to vie for executive positions in the Nigeria Medical Association in order to promote transparency in the health sector, contribute to activities that will demonstrate high impact on health, and ensure accountability for doctors in leadership positions. This is Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi when she became first the alternate president of the Medical Women's Association in 2019. Institutional mechanisms for the advancement of women. M1 has developed various mechanisms and strategies for putting deserving M1 members in the spotlight, such as presentation of annual and biennial awards, in addition to recognition as M1 ambassadors. Human rights of women. M1 has organized programs to review legislation and achieve legal literacy in collaboration with FIDA and other relevant organizations. Women and the media. M1 releases press statements, addresses position papers on several health and health-related issues, including International Women's Day, female genital mutilation, etc. Several awareness campaigns on breast and cervical cancer, COVID-19, as well as other health issues have been organized by M1, which have been publicized in electronic, print, and social media. M1 national and state executives and members have been interviewed on several national and state television and radio stations. Women and the environment. M1 has organized capacity building for management of healthcare waste and created awareness on proper disposal of waste, for instance, bagging of waste. The girl child. M1 celebrates World Menstrual Hygiene Day and organizes various programs to promote adolescent health, including marking the International Day of the Girl Child. So that is the end of my presentation, and I hope that these activities that have been implemented by M1 can be replicated in other countries and other regions that make up MWIA. Thank you very much, and God bless. Next presentation is Council of Europe, CET. I will now call on Dr. Irene Calesini from Italy to give her presentation on the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, the Istanbul Convention. Dr. Irene, are you there? Okay. If she's not there, we will take the next one. Dr. Elisabetta Rossi from Italy. Are you there? Dr. Elisabetta Rossi from Italy. Okay. She is not there either. All right. Our next presenter will be Dr. Zainab Mua. Dr. Zainab Mua, I believe you are there. I saw you.
Yes, good morning, ma.
Okay, so your presentation is on CEDAW, Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. So we're
Yes.
putting it up now and you can start. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this webinar. I'm Dr. Zainab Mua from University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital, Borno State, Nigeria. I'm presenting on Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, known as CEDAW. Okay. CEDAW is an international human rights treaty which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1979. The convention is often referred to as the International Bill of Rights for Women.
Your frequency ya kushare hiyo itaongezeka, visualization pia. Yani sababu ana not sports kwa mahusiano. Tuwe na hiyo level.
Interference. It is a legally binding document that requires states that have ratified it to make measures to eliminate discrimination against women in all areas of life. To date, 189 countries of 193 UN member states have ratified CEDAW. The United States has signed the convention in 1980, but it's still yet to ratify the convention. In Africa, Somalia and Sudan are also yet to ratify the convention. CEDAW convention is built on 3 fundamental principles, and these are non-discrimination, state obligation, and substantive equality. My next slide, please. My next slide. No. Down. Okay, the CEDAW has 30 articles and 6 parts. These are the articles, but for the purpose of this convention, we are going to take the first 6 articles known as part 1 of the CEDAW convention. Next slide, please. So these are the first 6 articles, also known as the part 1 of the CEDAW. Article 1 is discrimination. Article 2 is policy measures. Article 3 is basic human rights and fundamental freedom. Article 4 is special measures, while Article 5 is sex roles, stereotyping, and prejudice. Article 6 is prostitution. As I've already said, the CEDAW has 30 articles that outline the rights of women and request signatory countries to take steps to eliminate discrimination against women. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to take the first 6 articles. Article 1 is discrimination, and this article defines discrimination against women and reaffirms the obligation of states to eliminate discrimination against women in all its form, whether it be direct or indirect. This can be political discrimination, economic discrimination, social discrimination, cultural discrimination, and so on. And if we look at this picture, just singling out somebody, that is, if you see the line and then taking up one, you are discriminating against this person. So the next slide, please, which is Article 2. Article 2 is obligations for elimination of discrimination. And this refers to policy measures to be taken by the individual parties or the countries that have signed and ratified these obligations. So it obliged the state parties to take all appropriate measures, including legislation and policies to eliminate discrimination against women and ensure their equal rights in all spheres of life. This includes abolishing existing laws, customs, and regulations that are discriminatory to women. Article 3 is to guarantee the basic human rights of women, and this also leads to their development, and it's also called development of women. So states that this article states that the elimination of discrimination against women requires the promotion of women's human rights and fundamental freedoms, and recognizes that these rights are inalienable part of universal human rights. Article 4 is acceleration of equality, and this are temporary special measures can be taken. Example is the 35% affirmation for women in political and elective positions. And this article calls for the adoption of temporary measures to accelerate the achievement of gender equality in areas where women are underrepresented or are disadvantaged. Example, like in Nigeria, it's the political space. Article 5 talks about sex roles and stereotyping. This article requires state parties to take all appropriate measures to eliminate prejudice and customary and customs and all other practices that are based on the idea of the inferiority or superiority of either of the sexes, or stereotype roles for males and females. And this, if with example of this is like girls, you dress them in pink, boys should be blue, women should be in the kitchen cooking and all those kind of stuff. And then men or boys are good in football, they are better leaders, they are better in politics and things like that. So this should be eliminated as well. So Article 6 talks about exploitation of women, and this includes trafficking and prostitution. Article 6 recognizes that trafficking and exploitation of women for prostitution are incompatible with the dignity and worth of the human person and should be prohibited. It also obliges states to take measures to eliminate such practices. Article 7, I'm taking Article 6 articles for the purpose of this convention, but Article 7 is also about political and public life, the right to vote, hold offices, and actively participate in politics. CEDAW in Nigeria ratified the convention in 1985, and since then, CEDAW has been an important tool for promoting women's rights and gender equality in the country. The work of CEDAW in Nigeria is overseen by the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which is composed of 23 experts on women's rights from around the world. Next slide. The committee reviews Nigeria's periodic reports on the measures taken to implement the convention and provides recommendations for improving the situation of women's rights in the country. Nigeria has so far submitted 7 periodic reports since ratifying this convention. The latest report was submitted in 2020. The priority areas of CEDAW in Nigeria include education, health, and political participation. And for example, the CEDAW has been used to promote girls' child education in Nigeria and to address also the issue of early marriage or child marriage, which is one of the reasons that keeps these girls out of school. Girl child and early marriage is a significant problem, especially in northern Nigeria. The convention has also been used to address the issue of gender-based violence and to promote women's participation in politics. Next. In 2015, Nigeria passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, known as the VAP Act, which was partly influenced by CEDAW. This act criminalizes various forms of violence against women, including rape, sexual harassment, female genital mutilation, harmful widowhood practices, and so on. The act also provides for the protection and compensation of victims of violence. In addition to the work of the committee, there are also a number of non-governmental organizations in Nigeria that work on women's rights and gender equality issues. And Medical Women Association of Nigeria is one of such organizations that works in this field. This organization often use CEDAW as a tool for promoting women's rights and for holding government accountable for its obligation under the convention, which it has ratified. Next slide, please. Next slide. So in conclusion, the work of CEDAW in Nigeria has been important in promoting women's rights and gender equality in the country. The VAP law is an important instrument that in Nigeria, and this law has been passed in Borno State. The convention has been used to address a variety of issues, including education, health, and political participation of women. While there is still much work to be done to fully implement the convention in Nigeria, CEDAW has been an important tool for progress in women's rights and gender equality in Nigeria and Borno State, where I live and practice, because Borno State is one of the states that have passed the VAP law and also the Child's Rights Act. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab Mua, for your brilliant presentation on CEDAW. I know many of us have been hearing about CEDAW, but today we now know what is inside CEDAW, and we can be guided in our advocacy and other interventions to eliminate violence against women and girls using the instruments known as CEDAW. Our next speaker is Dr. Cornelia Tauber-Bachmann from Germany. She is speaking on protocol to the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. And she has sent us her recorded presentation. So you will be seeing the PowerPoint scrolling and you are going to be hearing her recorded voice. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm very sorry for not being able to speak to you personally, but at the moment I'm busy in my practice working with patients. And as all our schedules are filled up with appointment, and it's difficult to get such a lot of busy women in a definite time limit, we decided to try it this way. I hope it will work. It's the first time I just do it like that. I present to you the so-called Maputo Protocol. It's special because it's the only treaty that specifically addresses women and girls in Africa. The Maputo Protocol is the completion of the African Charter of Human and People's Rights. This charter is running since 1986, and the Maputo Protocol is done because women's rights and protection were not regarded effective and adequate by the first charter. The Maputo Protocol is so-called officially the Protocol to the African Charter of Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. In 2005, it became into operation and was signed and ratified until October 2019 by 42 of 55 African states. You can see it on the screen. Some states signed it, but didn't ratify it until now. And 2 states sure have neither signed nor ratified it. Those are Botswana and Egypt. The Maputo Protocol contains 32 articles. There's the next PowerPoint slide. Article 26 to 32 are just articles about the procedure to bring the protocol into force. Article 1 to 25 are the important ones. You see the different articles on the screen. Well, I hope so anyway. As we have only a short time, I will refer to some of the articles which I think are in a certain way revolutionary. Sure, the Maputo Protocol is a human rights instrument to protect a woman from cultural abuse. The Maputo Protocol obliges state parties to address discrimination against women and girls and take measures by institutional or legislative way to name gender biases that may cause discrimination. The Maputo Protocol promotes women's dignity and recognizes their rights, their human rights and their legal rights. The state is obliged to protect them from violence, exploit, or degradation. The Maputo Protocol guarantees all women and girls the right to live integrally and secure. And it prohibits genital mutilation that might hurt and or might harm the woman. The Maputo Protocol says that the minimum age for a girl to marry is 18, and that all marriages shall take place with the full consent of both parties. It says that within the context of marriage, there must be full equality. In case of divorce, it provides responsibility of both sides for the children, and the joint property shall be shared equally. The Maputo Protocol says that women enjoy equal protection and access to justice. The states shall take all appropriate measures to ensure that. It says that women shall be involved in political and decision-making processes. It says that women have the right to peaceful existence and shall be protected in armed conflicts. And that girls and women should have access to champions education, which is, I think, one of the very important articles. The Maputo Protocol promotes women's rights to health and reproduction. That means access to adequate and affordable health service, especially protection from HIV. It also contains the promotion of adequate housing and acceptable living conditions for women in a healthy and sustainable environment. The Maputo Protocol upholds the rights of vulnerable groups such as widows, elderly women, women with disabilities, or women in distress. There should be found remedies to help them and protect them. Well, what is the conclusion? Doubtless, the Maputo Protocol provides a far-reaching human rights guarantee. But the criticism is there as well. The Maputo Protocol is said to be too vague and that it doesn't name the real problems that are especially combined to marriage, to bride price, and to genital mutilation. So there is still in many countries a bride price or a dowry to be paid. And with that price, the woman gets part of her husband's property. Somebody who is property just can't inherit, and a fortune doesn't have to be shared with a property. It is said that genital mutilation is not described exactly, and that there is not a mentioning of breast ironing, and you have to imagine that 58% of girls suffering from breast ironing would be hurt by their mothers. Not mentioned is a forced marriage, which still is a use in some of the countries. And the problem is that child trafficking, sexual exploitation, widows' rights, and are not really named. But I'm sure it provides a fair, far-reaching human rights and guarantee, and it's a beginning.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, in absentia, our very own Dr. Cornelia from Germany, for giving us such a wonderful insight in the Maputo Protocol. Now we still haven't got our previous two speakers from Italy. I don't know why they haven't joined. I do not know. They've not sent us any message that we can understand. We hope they will join us before the end of the session. So the next presentation is a presentation on the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women. That's the Belém do Pará Convention. Now, this presentation is being made by my humble self, standing in for our member of the Special Interest Group, Dr. Nadir Pratis from Brazil. And she's not able to participate today because she's bereaved of her husband, Professor Dr. Jose Carlos Pratis. And as we begin the presentation, we would like to observe a minute of silence for her dear husband. May the soul of Professor Dr. Jose Carlos Pratis rest in peace.
Amen.
Amen. So by way of introduction, we would like to inform you that the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women, Convention of Belém do Pará, is an instrument for rolling back violence against women and girls among the Organization of American States. Key information about this instrument is that it was established or enacted on the 9th of June, 1994. It has 5 chapters. It has 25 articles, and this was done in the city of Belém do Pará, Brazil. And in the reference, it cites one regional and one international instrument, namely the American Declaration of the Rights and Duties of Man and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The contents are as follows. You have the preamble, then you have chapter 1, which is the definition and scope of application. And the first two articles, 1 and 2, are therein. You have chapter 2, which is about rights protected and covers articles 3 to 6. You have chapter 3, which talks about the duties of states and covers articles 7 to 9. You have chapter 4, which is the Inter-American Mechanisms of Protection, covering articles 10 to 12. And finally, you have chapter 5, which is general provisions, covering articles 13 to 25. I will just go through the preamble so that you have a feel of what it's all about. The state parties to this convention, recognizing that full respect for human rights has been enshrined in the American Declaration of Rights and Duties of Man and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and reaffirmed in other international and regional instruments, affirming that violence against women constitutes a violation of their human rights and fundamental freedoms, and impairs or nullifies the observance, enjoyment, and exercise of such rights and freedom. Concerned that violence against women is an offense against human dignity and a manifestation of the historically unequal power relations between women and men. Recalling the Declaration of the Elimination of Violence Against Women adopted by the 25th Assembly of Delegates of the Inter-American Commission of Women, and affirming that violence against women pervades every sector of society, regardless of class, race, or ethnic group, income, culture, level of education, age, or religion, and strikes at its very foundation. Convinced that the elimination of violence against women is essential for their individual and social development and their full and equal participation in all walks of life, and convinced that the adoption of a convention on the prevention, punishment, and eradication of all forms of violence against women within the framework of the Organization of American States is a positive contribution to the rights of women and eliminating violence against them, having agreed to the following. And so they go on to give you the various articles in the chapters as have been outlined earlier. But an article that stands out in these articles is the Article 4, and I present it as follows. Every woman has the right to the recognition, enjoyment, exercise, and protection of all human rights and freedoms embodied in regional and international human rights instruments. These rights include, among others, A, the right to have her life respected. B, the right to have her physical, mental, and moral integrity respected. C, the right to personal liberty and security. D, the right not to be subjected to torture. E, the right to have the inherent dignity of her person respected and her family protected. F, the right to equal protection before the law and of the law. G, the right to simple and prompt recourse to a competent court for protection against acts that violate her rights. H, the right to associate freely. I, the right of freedom to profess her religion and beliefs within the law. And J, the right to have equal access to the public service of her country and to take part in the conduct of public affairs, including decision making. I will now present some highlights of the brief of the international and regional mechanisms on discrimination and violence against women and girls in preparation for the Commission for the Status of Women 67, which occurred this month. We had this virtual meeting as we're preparing to have the CSW in New York, virtually and physically. And some of the very interesting outcomes or findings as we had this program was that Morocco, a country in Africa, is not a signatory to the African Charter, but CEDAW. So it is desirable that agencies responsible for the implementation of various instruments should interrogate compliance with other instruments other than their own. So this is an additional intervention that can be implemented, just as we're still waiting to get the global treaty that Dr. Nwadinobi, the MWIA president, talked about. Whenever we are interrogating the implementation of these various instruments, we find out whether they are having implementation of other instruments. And that is why collaboration is key. So we know which countries are doing what. Then we have care for the elderly women who are victims of violence must be given high importance, as some of them actually get killed. An empowerment self-defense mobile app has been developed and can be accessed through.
I understand. No.
And that link is going to be circulated with the other materials so that we can all learn about this self-defense mobile app. We should be aware of auto-violence. This is self-violence against women. And what does it mean? It was at this event that I heard about auto-violence for the first time. It was quite interesting. This is where a woman chooses to follow stereotypes. And rather than having a career, she chooses not to have a career that will empower her to be independent and to be able to contribute, but just having a family only. And because of this, you find out that she becomes vulnerable. And this is a way of promoting violence against oneself. And so we need to be aware of it so that we implement strategies to make sure that many women in our communities are not practicing auto-violence. We should identify positive cultural content in the communities we work in and highlight them. This is part of our negotiating skills to resolve conflict. If you go into a community and you just keep saying everything they're doing is wrong, you will build resistance. But whenever you see something that is good, you highlight it, you promote it, you encourage it, so that when you are now trying to withdraw or eliminate or control the harmful traditional practices, you will not sound like a broken record and you will get more cooperation. While not resting on our laurels, we must celebrate where we are today. We haven't gotten to the part where violence against women and girls will be banned the way smoking has been banned, but we've come a long way and sensitization has helped. We should seek to work closely with institutions and agencies responsible for the implementation of various instruments such as the African Charter on Human Rights and provide feedback to each other. Whatever interventions civil society organizations undertake must be in the confines of the law. The issue of digital and technology facilitated violence must be addressed. And here we had a presenter who told us that a lady was being tracked online and so many types of offensive statements were being sent to her. And it was as if she was going to be physically harassed because she could see that she was being tracked. And she now went to the police to report. And the police had no clue what she was talking about. And they said they don't have the training to be able to help her to overcome this cyber crime that she was experiencing. So that's why training is so important. If we don't train various groups of people, the judiciary, the law enforcement agencies, and so on, we find out that when we now go there for redress, justice will not be served. About the Medical Women's International Association Violence Against Women and Girls Special Interest Group. The MWIA Violence Against Women and Girls Special Interest Group is made of 8 members, namely Dr. Mininim Oseji, Dr. Bilkis Wurala Latishe Muhammad, Professor Mandaki Mehr of India, number 1 and 2 are from Nigeria, Dr. Irene Calesini from Italy, Dr. Elisabetta Rossi from Italy, Dr. Zainab Mua from Nigeria, Dr. Nadi Valverde Barbato do Pratis from Brazil, and Dr. Cornelia Tauber-Bachmann from Germany. Dr. Mininim Oseji is the chair. The group had its inaugural meeting via Zoom on Wednesday, 23rd November 2022. The terms of reference for the group are as follows: to develop a monitoring system to collect data on cases of violence against women and girls reported from member countries, to improve cultural and medical knowledge about violence against women and girls, to enable the identification and implementation of interventions to reduce this problem, to enlighten medical women and other stakeholders on the dangers associated with violence against women and girls, and available treaties, protocols, and conventions for addressing this scourge. And today's event helps us fulfill number 3 term of reference, and to develop an annual work plan for quarterly activities for 2023, 2024, and 2025. So this particular activity today is our activity for Q1, the first quarter in 2023, and we also use it to commemorate the International Women's Day, which holds every March every year. Any other activity as the need arises. Thank you very, very much for listening to us. Please note that you can post your questions because we'll soon get to the question and answer sessions. You can post your questions in the chat box, and we will be able to take your questions at the appropriate time. So our next presentation is also going to be a recorded presentation. That is review of recent research on effective interventions on eliminating violence against women and girls. It is presented by Dr. Bilkis Wurola Alatishe Mohammed, and we're going to have that now. Thank you so much for your patience.
Our international president, good day to everyone here today. It's been a long day, and we are looking at violence against women and girls. I will be talking about effective intervention on eliminating violence against women and girls. And I am Dr. Bilkis Alatishe Mohammed. Violence against women and girls is an act that results in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women or girls. We've heard so much about this already. And some of these are intimate partner violence, harmful traditional practices, non-partner sexual abuse, child abuse, and human trafficking, among many others. Prior to 4 decades ago, violence against women and girls was swept under the carpet issue that frizzled out in the sunlight. If you look at the SDG that says to leave no one behind, we cannot fulfill this without putting an end to violence against women and girls. And there are effective interventions that aim to reduce the risk of various forms of violence against women and girls, occurring, reoccurring, ending, and also provide support to people that have been victims of this. What do we have? 1 in 3 women have violence against women and girls, and majority of these are faced with intimate partner violence. Violence against women and girls incurs high psychological, social, and economic costs for women, their families, and societies as a whole. They go through homicide and suicide, unintended pregnancies, induced abortion, transmission of STDs, including HIV. We've seen that violence against women and girls is more in girls, is higher in girls, and this is about 2.5 to 3 times more in girls than boys. 11.4 million women and girls are trafficked worldwide, and 3 million girls are at risk of female genital mutilation in Africa. 60 million women between the age of 20 to 24 years get married before they are 18 years worldwide, and 70% of women worldwide have experienced partner sexual assault. If we look at the forms of violence against women and girls using the life cycle stages, pre-birth, when you have sex-selective abortion, because you're carrying a female pregnancy, the pregnancy is aborted. Look at infancy, female infanticide, neglect, because it's a girl child. Childhood, you go through female genital mutilation, child abuse, and malnutrition. And then as an adolescent, a lady is meant to go through forced prostitution, trafficking, forced early marriage, psychological abuse, and rape. The reproductive age, a woman goes through honor and dowry claiming, intimate partner violence, also sex trafficking. And as an elderly, a woman faces widow abuse or economic abuse. This is going through the life cycle of violence against women. And like we discussed before, we have intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual abuse, harmful traditional practices, human trafficking, and child sexual abuse. The ecological model of violence against women. If you look at it from the personal, as a person, as a family, as a community, institutional, or societal. As a person, you have different factors because of the background, the characteristics of the person, the skills the person has. As a family, the structure of the family, the history, the relationship, the quality and living condition. As a community, the custom, the social support or social relationship one is able to get. As an institution and also as a society. All these contribute to situate the violence against women and girls, because the kind of background looks at the situation surrounding a person, the location, the things in those surroundings. You can be exposed to alcohol, to drug use, poverty, emotional distress. And in the society as well, there might be some barriers, some enforcement prevention program that could either aid or abate violence against women and girls. Let's look at the effective interventions. We have the first generation intervention. This provides support services for survivors of the violence, reduces perpetrators' impunity, and increase the effectiveness of the justice system. But for the second generation, it prevents the occurrence ab initio of this violence from occurring. And then you have the primary intervention. It reduces the number of new instances. In this case, you do not want to, the process of violence against women and girls does not even occur. And then we have these types of intervention include first intervening at the fostering places where violence is less likely to occur, challenging acts that could condone violence. You know, all these are being so that the violence does not occur at the first instance. So, for example, when you challenge the attitudes and behavior and practices which may justify or condone this violence, while violence may in practice have occurred among some of the population set, the intervention does not target individual on the basis of the violence that has already occurred. So in this instance, it reduces the number of new instances of violence by intervening before violence takes place. And we have some examples of this: home visitation, group training program, advocacy, community mobilization, bystanders intervention. And the secondary intervention, at this stage, it refers to mitigating the immediate consequences of abuse by providing already abused women and girls with services and support For example, where we have emergency contraception, post-exposure prophylactic, psychological support and counseling. Among pertinently for this reviews primary outcome, also preventing reoccurrence or repeat of abuse in the secondary intervention. When we look at the typography of intervention, you know, interventions of interest, these are the community mobilization, the old school intervention, peer or relationship interventions, parenting intervention, small group intervention, economic intervention combined with gender training, and then social change in the media. And then where do you enter? That's our entry point of interest. We can enter through the schools, through families, through workplaces, and also we can use the communities to intervene in these instances. And then what are the population that we are interested in? We have the marginalized group of women, the adolescent boys with multiple risk factors. We have younger boys and girls, couples, very high, people that are staying in very high prevalent settings, and of course, parents and children. And then what are the challenges that face this effective intervention? We have challenges that the violence against women and girls closely interrelate with deeply entrenched social norms like values, belief, attitude, behavior, and practice, and therefore can be particularly difficult to address. There are many barriers to overcome before impact is evident, and lasting changes in behavior or attitude may take a period of one generation to take to another. Overcoming many of these barriers before the impact can be evident. Lack of standardized measures of violence against women and girls' outcomes. Without good monitoring and evaluation in place, the effectiveness of the violence against girls and women interventions cannot be ascertained. And then we have limited evidence from conflict zones and some vulnerable groups. The need for cost effectiveness of interventional program, the political will and commitment is poor, and gaps of implementing policies that will help curb violence against women and girls. So what do we want to recommend? To researchers and grant agencies, we want to propose multi-sector studies. This can be done in different locations, and results should be compared and analyzed to have an impact on evaluation research on effective violence against women interventional program. To the World Health Organization, there is need to formulate universal indications with which programs can be monitored and evaluated locally and globally. To relevant stakeholders, politicians, healthcare workers, M1, Medical Women International Association, there is need to synchronize projects to avoid duplication of effort and resource wastage. It is also imperative to actively and continually engage the community. Political will and commitment is sacrosanct in eliminating all forms of violence against girls and women. The program developers, there is need to use multi-component, culturally adaptable, integrated approach in designing an effective intervention to eliminate violence against women and girls. I think we all need to work together to ensure that these interventions, they become practicable and see the light of the day in order for us to be able to reduce and stop and eliminate violence against girls and women in the global world. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alatishe Mohammed, in absentia, for that thought-provoking presentation. You can see the areas for future research, and we hope that before the triennium of the MWI is over, we would have published some research in these areas. I am very pleased to say that our previous two speakers, Dr. Irene and Dr. Elisabetta, are now here. So we're going to take Dr. Irene's presentation, which is on Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, Istanbul Convention. Dr. Irene Calesini from Italy, please, you have.
Good morning. I try to go on with my presentation, but I don't I don't know how I can go on with the slides.
We will do the slides for you from here. Just go ahead to speak, and we will.
Okay. Please go to slide number 2. Thank you. Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence is the first international legally binding instrument for the adopting countries. It states that violence against women in all forms must be fought by prevention, punishment of the perpetrators, protection of the victims, and adopting adequate policies. It was signed in April 2011 in Istanbul by several European and non-European countries. Now it has been ratified in 34 countries, even if some of them, such as Poland, wants to withdraw, and Turkey withdrew from it in March 2021. The convention focuses on domestic violence, and let's have a look at its interesting preamble and articles in order to understand its purposes. Slide 3, thank you. Parties claim that they aspire to create an Europe free from violence. In fact, the member states of the Council of Europe and other signatories, recalling many other acts, such as the Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, etc., condemn all forms of violence against women and domestic violence. Slide 4, please. Parties recognize that the realization of the jure and de facto equality between women and men is a key element in the prevention of that violence, and that violence against women is a manifestation of historically unequal power relations between women and men. Slide 5, please. Thank you. Parties recognize also that the structural nature of violence against women as gender-based violence, and that it is one of the crucial social mechanisms by which women are forced into a subordinate position compared to men. Therefore, parties recognize that, slide number 6, please, women and girls are exposed to a higher risk of gender-based violence than men, and that children are victims of domestic violence, including as witnesses of violence in the family. I would like to point out this aspect because living in a violent context promotes violent behaviors and or victim attitude. Thank you. The main purposes of the convention are protect women against all forms of violence and prevent, prosecute, and eliminate violence against women and domestic violence, contribute to the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, and promote substantive equality between women and men, and design a comprehensive framework, policies, and measures for the protection and for the assistance of all victims of violence. Yes, the scope of this convention is important, and the convention shall apply to all forms of violence against women, both in times of peace and in armed conflicts. This is a hope, a hopeness. But the convention defines violence against women as a violation of human rights and a form of discrimination against women, and shall mean all acts of gender-based violence that result in or are likely to result in physical, sexual, psychological, or economic harm or suffering to women, including threats, whether occurring in public or in private life. Women includes girls under the age of 18. Slide 10, please. Domestic violence, it shall mean all acts of physical, sexual, psychological, or economic violence that occur within the family or domestic unit or between former or current spouses or partners, whether or not the perpetrators shares or has shared the same residence with the victim. The convention also defines gender and gender-based violence, you can see. To realize its purposes, the convention obliges the parties to the 11th, yes, thank you, improve adequate policies to promote and protect the right of women, particularly to live free from violence in both the public and the private sphere. I want you to notice that both public and private life contexts are considered at the same level, and intimate partner violence is not a private matter. This is a big change in mentality. Parties condemn also all forms of discrimination against women and take without delay the necessary legislative and other measures to prevent it and ensure the practical realization of the principle of equality between women and men. Also by abolishing laws and practices which discriminate against women. The next, please. We can see that this convention clearly defines violence against women in every context and refuses it as well as women discrimination. It therefore demands the necessary measures to fight them, as allocating appropriate financial and human resource and supporting the work of non-governmental organizations and these of the civil society combating that violence. Next, data collection and research support are also foreseen, and you can see on the slide. It's important, but I want to say that collection of data is still difficult because of underestimation of cases, for the low number of complaints, and because many governments allocate only poor financial resource on this topic. Shall I prosecute for a few minutes? Next, please. A strong means to eradicate the violence is preventing it through the education of the new generations and the information of large segments of the populations. In fact, we can read that education, parties shall take the necessary steps to include the teaching material on issues such as equality between women and men, non-stereotyped gender roles, mutual respect, etc., adapted to the evolving capacity of learners in formal curricula and at all levels of education, as well as in sports, cultural, and leisure facilities. This is a very, very important. Next, please. Training. Training is important. Parties shall provide an appropriate training for the professional dealing with victims or perpetrators, and that is based on the needs and rights of victims, as well as on how to prevent secondary victimization. This is another important topic, to avoid victimization when the victim repeats to different interlocutors her experience, and she is not, and no one believes her when she gets judged by the policeman or another operator who is talking with her. The next other measures are also foreseen as intervention and treatment programs regarding perpetrators, and the protection and support for the victims are provided. It's relevant, next please, it's relevant note that the provision of services shall not depend on the victim's willingness to press charges or testify against any perpetrators. This is important because women are often scared to complain, and they often need a long time to do it. I will go at the end. The next, please. The convention also obliges to provide general support services for the victims and immediate, short and long-term specialistic support services to all women victims of violence and their children, shelters, telephone helplines, etc., and the protection and support for child witnesses. The next, please. Furthermore, parties shall take the necessary legislative or other measures to combat forced marriage, psychological violence, stalking, sexual violence including rape, sexual harassment, female genital mutilation, forced abortion, and forced sterilization. And also, it's important, it also refuses any justifications for crimes, including crimes committed in the name of so-called honor. The next, please. An important instrument of monitoring and implementation is the GRIVIO, the groups of experts on action against violence against women and domestic violence. It shall be composed of 10 or 15 members with multidisciplinary expertise elected by the committee of the party. The members should represent relevant actors and agencies in the field of combating violence against women, and they shall be independent and impartial in the exercise of their function. The committee of the parties can adopt, on the basis of the report and conclusions of GRIVIO, recommendations addressed to implementation. In Italy, yes, conclusion, and go to the conclusion, please. The next, please. This convention can be a strong cultural instrument to develop a change in mentality, because it considers all forms of violence, including psychological harms and threats, as violation of human rights, denounces private as well public violence, protects children who witness and suffer violence, includes a monitoring tool, Unfortunately, these are not concrete measures for those states that do not completely or sufficiently apply the above agreement. Next and final, please. Next and final, please. And strong implementation is needed in prevention programs and education, and also in women's empowerment activities. Thank you for your attention, and good morning.
Very much, Dr. Irene. That was brilliant. In fact, when you talked about changing mentality, I always tell any woman who has been abused, who has experienced violence, say, come on board and join the advocacy. We need flyers, we need jingles, we need ways to create awareness. And when I meet a man, particularly a man who has carried out an act of violence, I send him materials, these conventions, like the CEDAW Convention, I send it to him. I say, see all the things that you have infringed upon by your act. So the sensitization is what is going to change the mentality. Thank you very much. I want to remind our audience, thank you for your patience. If you have questions, please put it in the chat. All the presentations are going to be circulated through the regional vice president, through the Secretary General, the regional vice president, and the national presidents of the national association. So you are going to get everything that is being presented. And if the recording too, once it's available, it will be circulated, as well as relevant links to help us all put our hands together, roll back violence against women and girls, and eventually eliminate it. We're going to have the next presentation, which is the 7th presentation, and that is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to be presented by Dr. Elisabetta Rossi from Italy as well. And I'm sure this is also going to be equally interesting. Thank you, Dr. Elisabetta. You have the floor.
Non si sente.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yes, sorry. Okay, so good morning, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Mini, for the organization of this very interesting webinar. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was proclaimed in Paris in 1948. But how was it born? I mean, why did the need arise for such a declaration? It was after the Second World War in 1945. Everybody knows how the Second World War was terrible. By its end, hundreds of cities across Europe and Asia were completely destroyed, and between 60 to 68 million of people were dead, and millions more were homeless or starving because of new poverty. All this troubled the consciences of many people. So in response to all these terrible things, delegates from 50 different countries gathered in San Francisco in 1945 with the intention to do something. I mean, to prepare an international body to promote peace and prevent future wars and future horrors. The delegates came from different countries, and it has been very important because they came from different religion, political, cultural backgrounds. So the sense of this declaration is to affirm the idea that human rights are universal, meaning that they apply to all human beings everywhere, regardless of their race, gender, religion, and etc. It is a milestone document in the history of human rights, and it has been translated into over 500 languages. So the next, please. Women delegates, the next slide, please. Women delegates from various countries played a key role in getting women's rights included in the declaration. So it is known that the Committee of Human Rights that drew up the declaration was inspired and chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, the widow of the President Franklin Roosevelt. And its role was fundamental in negotiation between the parties. Next, please. But it is due to the Indian writer Ansa Mehta, I'm sorry, maybe my pronunciation is not correct, but his contribution was very, very important because she pretended to change the first phrase in the Article 1, who said all men are born free and equal, to change in all human beings are born free and equals. And it is clear to understand that this little changement has been revolutionary in terms of future women's rights declarations. Next, please. The declaration is made up of a preamble that you can find here and of 30 articles which sanction the individual, civil, political, such as the right of free speech, economical, social, right to education, to work, to healthcare of every person. And next, please. 70 years after that moment, the next slide, please. The university, it is not seeing well, but never mind. I say that 70 years after that moment, the Universal Declaration still represents one of the main instruments for the international protection of human rights and one of the most important goals in the history of international law. But it is not a law, it is not binding. I mean, the declaration is a suggestion, a goodwill. It is not binding for the countries who accepted it. And that means that despite the progress that we have achieved during the last years in the human rights, there are still many countries where the articles of the declaration are not fully or not applied at all. So just a few examples to understand this observation. The next slide, please. And each of us can reflect on himself if the article is really applied, it's fully applied, for example, in its own country. Just a few examples. Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. It is really what happens. I mean, it is really right. It is really applied for the women. Can women freely and with security walk in the town in the street of their towns, maybe in the evening, or not? Or it is dangerous. Article 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. So the thing that pops in my mind is about sexual slavery or forced prostitution. I mean, how many girls are attracted with deception in the richest country with the hope of the work and they forced to prostitute? Next, please. Article 16, marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouse. So everyone knows the habits of child brides. And every one of us knows the different treatment between men and women after a divorce, for example. Article 23, everyone has the right to work, and everyone should receive equal pay for equal work. How many countries are there women find it difficult to find work? And in how many countries are they paid less? For example, in Italy, there are a lot of occupation where women are paid less than men. these are only examples, but it is useful to think about all this. Next slide, please. Everyone has the right to education. So all of us knows the problem in many countries where girls cannot go to school or to university, or girls are forced to stop studying after the primary school, for example, because it is not important that the woman must study. We know that the freedom is a consequence of the instruction of education, and if a woman it is not instructed or education or has not culture, it's easier for the manpower to keep her in a low grade, how to say. Article 27. Everyone has the right to participate in cultural, artistic, and scientific life. So we are medical doctor. It is important, this scientific life for me, because, for example, how many times have you been overtaken by a male colleague, not because he was better than you, but just because it was a man? And how many times have you heard that girls don't understand nothing about math or physical or chemical, so that science is not for her? Next, please. So just some example about the declaration that I repeat is still very, very important, because it was the base of all the other declaration and treat that came after that. But I conclude with this imagine of the sea of Italy. Maybe next time we can meet here. It's nice. And to remind that the counterpart of rights are duties. So our effort must always go in the direction, it is our duty of enforcing rights that we surely deserve. And so I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elisabetta. I particularly liked what you said, that they had to change all men are born free to all human beings are born free, because I already know some men who will say, no, it's not women who are born free, it's only men. So bringing out that point, and the language is very, very important in these instruments for us to understand what exactly is being said and what is being meant. And I'm very now, at this juncture, very pleased to inform you that our final speaker, Professor Madakini from India, is finally in the room. Please, can we give her a big applause? I'm so happy she was able to make it. Her day has been very busy. Professor Madakini, you've been made a co-host. We did not receive any slides from you, so I presume you are just going to talk to us about the final topic, which is key performance indicators to monitor efforts of national associations that contribute to reducing violence against women and girls. Professor Madakini, you have the floor. While we're waiting for Professor Madakini to take the mic and address us, I would like to also inform us that there are 6 instruments that have been discussed in today's webinar. And so when we are sending the PowerPoints through the Secretary General, Regional VP, and national presidents, we'll be sending the instruments, because we want to see these instruments cited. We want them to be used for awareness creation, for legislation, for prosecution, and also for monitoring. So we are still calling on Professor Madakini. You have been made a co-host. Unmute and address us. Send it to her now. She's the one that she's. Okay. I do not know what we will do. So I want to find out, do we have any questions? We've not seen any questions on the chat. Cut our time by 11 minutes, but if anybody, one or two people have a burning question, you can show by raise of hand, and then we will take the question before we begin to wrap up. At any time, if Professor Madakini can unmute and speak to us, we will take her presentation. I would like to also remind the members of the special interest group that we have our meeting shortly after now, so they shouldn't go away. Just a few minutes to discuss a very vital issue that has been presented to the committee, to the group. Yes, okay. We have one question in the chat, and the question goes thus: how have we utilized the conventions to address the challenges faced by school-age children and their safety in learning environments? This is a question from Zainab Kwaru Muhammad Idris. Can I call on Dr. Zainab Musa to answer this question? Dr. Zainab Musa.
Sorry, what's the question?
Yes, the question is, how have we utilized these conventions to address the challenges faced by school-age children and their safety in learning environments?
Okay. Yes, the VAP Act, which was passed in Nigeria and most states, I know in my state, the VAP Act is has been passed. The Child Rights Act has also been passed. So it's you can hold anyone accountable with these laws in place. And then you can use advocacy for people who... Hello?
Hello, that's nice. Oh, welcome, and I am happy to join this conference. Good morning.
Sorry.
Professor Madakini, you're welcome. Please go ahead and speak. We're listening to you.
Hello. Okay. Hello and good morning to all participants. That's nice. to meet you online.
Okay. So Zainab, Dr. Zainab, you can continue answering your question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I said also doing a lot of advocacy by M1 and to educate people on these laws. Some may say that they don't know the laws and they don't know that they exist. So by doing advocacy to communities, community leaders, religious leaders, I think, and educate them on these laws and the importance of girl-child education, I think we'll be able to surmount the problem. Thank you.
If we have, thank you very much. If I can just add to what Dr. Zainab has said, if we have effective school health programs, we can ensure the safety of this, the safety in the learning environments of school-age children, both those in primary school and those in secondary school. And the issue of adolescent health clinics, we can have secondary school children attending the adolescent health clinics where they will learn how to protect themselves and learn a lot of things about their reproductive health. So I believe these are initiatives that are already happening. The question is, how do we scale up? And everything we have said here, in one form or the other, I know it has happened in some part of the world. The question now is, if we have 253 countries in the world, how do we ensure that it's happening in all 253 countries? If we're having 53 countries in Africa, how do we ensure that it is happening in all 53, not just one or two? And if we're having 36 states in Nigeria, including our Federal Capital Territory, how do we ensure that all this is happening? So our take home is supposed to be, our take home is supposed to be scaling up. Whatever we are doing that is in line with these treaties, conventions, and protocols, how do we scale up? By the time we scale up, we will find out that we have actually rolled back and finally eliminated violence against women and girls. So those are my closing remarks. I'm very sorry that we are not able to hear from Professor Madakini, because we were really hoping to get some insights on what we're going to send to national associations to send as a form of report, something simple. It may just be one indicator that we will use to measure how well we are doing at the national level. And then through the regional VPs, we get that information and we look at 2023, how do we compare it with 2024, and how do we compare it with 2025? But I believe that we will still find a way around it. Ladies and few gentlemen here, I want to use this opportunity to thank you immensely for your beautiful participation, your engagement, your patience in our overshooting the time by now. But we know that we have been the better for staying all through. We had about 50 people when we were in the first 30 minutes, and we still have over 50 people as at the time of closing. This is indeed very gratifying. Thank you very much. I want to thank all our members of the special interest group who have been present here for their hard work putting these presentations together. I also want to thank our international president, Dr. Eleanor. She's multitasking, but she had to pop in to make those opening remarks because violence against women and girls is a priority to her. I want to thank the regional VP that is from Near Eastern African region, Dr. Claribel Abam, for being here. I also want to thank all the others for being here. If I haven't recognized you, forgive me, but I just want you to know that we are very happy you are here. We would like our participants to exit as quickly as possible because the special interest group members are staying back to have a brief meeting and discuss a very important issue. Thank you very much and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Now let's
Thank you. Bye.
tell Kennedy to come and present.
Somebody came and. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.